Good morning. Hey, you guys are up early. I don't care how late you were out. How are we doing? Good morning. All right, thank you. Thank y'all for being here so much. We are thrilled to welcome you to today's educational session, where we will not only be talking about sustainability, but more specifically, how it's good for business. This session is part of SEPC's new education series on sustainability, which we kicked off last month with a webinar on integrated pest management, and a recording of that can be shared upon request. We also have a sustainable packaging webinar planned for the end of October, and details for that will be shared soon. But for today, I'd like to first begin by thanking our educational session sponsors, Church Brothers Farms, Fife's North America, Great Lakes Greenhouses, Inc., Grimway Cal Organic Farms, and Kings River Packing, as well as our educational sessions refreshment area sponsors, Fresh Solutions Network and WP Produce. Yeah, thank you. And as a quick reminder, SEPC's antitrust policy does apply to today's discussion. We hope that you guys will also utilize this QR code. It will lead to SEPC's University Resources site, where you can find more information on the topics and tools our panelists mentioned today. And then also for Q&A, please utilize your SEPC app. So if you want to go ahead and get it open up your app and go into the sustainability session, and you will see at the bottom there's a Q&A area. So you can go right there and submit your questions. We're going to try to get to as many questions as possible during today's session, but if we don't get to yours, we will try to follow up with you afterwards. All right, today we are excited to welcome an excellent panel with representatives from across the supply chain. Each of them brings their own unique perspective on how sustainability can strengthen the bottom line, create tangible business value, and position our industry for long-term success. Our panelists today include our moderator, Karen McNeese, Director of Sustainability Programs from Measure to Improve, Jana Fishback, Sustainability Coordinator for Milk Growers, Justin LaCroix, Director of Sustainable Operations, Brand Lead, Health and Sustainability for Ahold Delhaize, Jonathan Quinn, President and CEO of U.S. Plastics Pack, and Tyler Simmons, VP of Revenue for Flash Food. With that, please give our panelists a warm welcome, and I'll hand it over to Karen.
Thank you so much, Garland, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning to talk about sustainability. Sustainability gets kind of a bad reputation, and we think of it as something that takes away from our business, that takes away from our time, from our employees' attention. And we are here today to talk about how sustainability can actually contribute to some of our business objectives. And we're joined by some really wonderful panelists today who have a lot to share. And I think we're just going to get started by asking everyone to go through, we've got a quick intro from Garland, but to talk a little bit more about who they are, the role they have, and how it relates to sustainability. And Jana, would you kick us off?
Sure, happy to. I'm Jana Fishback, Sustainability Coordinator for Milk Growers. I've been working in sustainability for about 10 years now. I got my start in the public sector and then moved on to lead a small nonprofit before joining Stemilt. Stemilt is a family-owned tree fruit company. Give a little feedback here. We grow apples, cherries, and pears in Washington State. And sustainability has been important to Stemilt for a very long time. I think, and as farmers, we really do think in generations rather than just to the next season, and that's what sustainability is all about, thinking about what we're doing now and how that impacts the future generations.
Wonderful. Justin.
Yes, good morning everyone. Justin LaCroix. I am with Ahold Delhaize USA, and for those of you that may not know ADUSA, so essentially it's a group of retailers with the global headquarters in the Netherlands, but in the US we're made up of retailers kind of going south to north of Food Lion, Giant Food, the Giant Company, Stop and Shop, and Hannaford. And so my team, we work on the ADUSA Health and Sustainability team. We cover a lot of different topics, and sustainability itself can be a very broad topic, but we focus on a lot of different initiatives. For me, myself, I focus on things around kind of sustainable operations, which is things like food waste in our stores, zero waste, reducing our scopes 1 and 2 emissions, and then I also support the Food Line brand as their health and sustainability brand lead, and work on really kind of all of these topics, and very happy to talk with everyone today.
Wonderful. And Jonathan?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Jonathan Quinn. I'm the CEO of the U.S. Plastic Pack. For those of you that don't know who the U.S. Plastic Pack is, we are a convener of all. So when we talk about the plastic packaging value chain, we represent everything from pellet to policy and everything in between. So when we talk about pellets, we're talking about the people that produce and make plastic, but then we're talking about brand owners, retailers, we're talking about packaging producers, but we're also talking about state and local government, recyclers, haulers, and everywhere in between, really bringing everybody together for one purpose, and that is to enable a plastic packaging circular economy. We do represent one of 14 global packs that are throughout the world. The packs was an initiative that was started by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and just this month we're celebrating our 5-year anniversary, so we're very much in our early phases, but we've developed a roadmap to circularity, and we have our 5 targets and goals, and Nahold is one of our activators or our members, but I'm very excited to be here today and very excited to talk with you all.
Wonderful. And Tyler?
Hi, I'm Tyler Simmons. I am VP of Revenue at Flash Food. And Flash Food is a technology service. It's a mobile app that connects grocers and consumers to sell any near expiration or surplus product at a discount. And so our benefit relative to sustainability and to a grocer's bottom line is that we reduce food waste. So every grocer faces shrink. It ranges from 1.5 to, in some cases, 5 or 6 or 7% of all inventory. It's especially heavy in fresh, both meat, produce, dairy. And so what we do is basically when grocers have product that is nearing expiration or in surplus, they post that on our platform. Consumers who've downloaded our app can search for stores in the areas around where they live, and they can choose the items they wish to purchase, listed at a discount. They go into the store to pick that food up after purchasing it on our platform. So the benefit for the grocer, they're reducing their shrink, they're reducing their food waste, but more importantly, they're actually recouping revenue back to their shrink line, and they're driving foot traffic physically into their stores. So depending on how much you post, you're gonna see 5, 10, 15 people or more walking into your stores every single day to purchase those goods that were at risk anyway, and then they very often will purchase additional retail goods. So it's a nice way to effectively drive foot traffic while also using a product that may have been thrown out.
Excellent. So we've already touched a little bit on waste, and waste is going to be our first topic for today, and then we're going to talk about packaging. But let's start with waste. This is often one of the first topics that companies tackle when they are talking about sustainability. It's something that touches every part of the supply chain, whether you were talking about food waste, whether you're talking about green waste. Justin, our first question is for you. Can you talk a little bit more about the waste reduction efforts that are going on at ADUSA and the benefits you're seeing from them?
Yes, for sure. So waste is definitely one of those categories that has a lot of different sustainability and business implications. So just general trash pickups, and if you think about many different grocery stores in many different regions and municipalities, can be costly. The trash itself can be costly to haul away, and so there is a business expense correlated to trash, and how you manage that trash and manage your different waste streams can be quite a notable kind of expense opportunity. So when we look at kind of grocery retail, we have a lot of different material types that come into stores, from cardboard to wax cardboard to kind of polycrate, different types of plastics to food and a lot of different food products and stuff. So managing each of those streams and kind of how we can really kind of drive operational efficiencies is something my team helps with and works with all of the different brands of ADUSA to get better at that. And at the end of the day, we have a good sustainability story with it when we're diverting more waste and we're kind of looking at where either a recycling stream maybe can either generate revenue or offset an expense, but it's a good sustainability story as well as a financial story as well too. So there's a lot that goes on to look at the waste streams and how we can be more efficient and drive those costs down. And just in the space of food waste, that's just one of the highest kind of volume opportunities just in general. When we think about food and the opportunity to feed people in our communities, that is a really strong opportunity as well too, to make sure food doesn't go to waste. It's feeding people where we can, and there's food rescue programs in place, and if it can't be donated, then it is recycled and kept out of the landfill. So waste is kind of, it's a really big topic, and it's one that we have a lot of different efforts and initiatives on, but it truly can help kind of deliver both financial benefits and environmental benefits when it's managed the right way.
Yeah. So Tyler, Justin mentioned food waste as one of those, and that is really what you are working on. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that you've been able to have and how much food we're keeping out of landfill and what portion of that fits into this sort of produce or fresh category?
Sure. So Flash Food, we've been around for 8 or 9 years, and in that time, we've diverted over 152 million pounds of food from going to waste. That's equated to about $386 million saved by shoppers who use our platform. So really substantial numbers in terms of saving people money and saving food from going to waste. We generally see with grocers, they've been able to reduce their shrink relative to specific food waste by about 25 to 30%. So pretty substantial reductions in that food waste. And what we want to do is basically extend the, we're not selling anything past the Best Buy day, but expand the retail opportunity that this food has on shelf. Obviously for a grocer, they want to make sure they have full shelves, they have appealing stores, especially in produce. You see beautiful stacks of apples and bananas and all those things, but you're never going to sell through all of it because you never want to stock perfectly no one wants to buy the last apple, right? And so in order to keep your stores looking the way that consumers expect them to look, we become that safety net and we become that service that allows a grocer to stock their shelves as they see fit and try to get as close as possible to sell through at 100%, but knowing that's never going to happen, this is a solution that kind of diversifies access to that food. Folks who may not, there are plenty of folks on our platform who just love a deal and they're looking for a fun way to shop at the grocer. There are other people who are food insecure but maybe aren't going to food banks. And so we want to support donation, and I think we'll talk about that later, but we create this access channel to perfectly good fresh food that people are very excited to eat and to interact with the store. And the impact of that is less food going to waste, and it makes a big difference when you add it up across the footprint of the grocers that we work with.
Yeah. So that's the retail end of it, but we also have some representation on the other side of the supply chain. So Janet, can you talk a little bit about the green waste programs that are in place with Stemilt?
Sure. We have been commercially composting at Stemilt for 20 years now. It got started by one of our owners, Kyle Matheson, a fourth-generation grower, who really began doing it because he believed that healthier soil led to healthier trees, which led to better fruit quality. That was kind of his motivation. But there are a lot of other operational benefits to composting as well. Composting can help us divert our fruit rot. So in our packing houses, obviously there's a lot of fruit that we can't pack that isn't suitable, and so we needed a good outlet for that. And rather than filling up our local landfill or finding some other option, we decided to put that to good use, and so that goes to the composting facility. So it's this nice closed loop system where you're taking this product from the orchard, you're diverting it from the landfill, sending it to compost, and then it goes back to the orchard, which is a really great sustainability story that our retailers and customers love to hear, and it's really easy to understand, really clear, I think, example of a good sustainable practice. In terms of applying compost, it doesn't necessarily replace like a synthetic fertilizer, but it definitely increases the efficiency of that. It helps with water retention, helps with soil structure. So there's a lot of benefits. So we probably offset a little bit of our costs from some synthetic fertilizers in our conventional orchards. And for organic orchards, it's even more important because we don't have those synthetic inputs. So we really need those natural inputs to increase our soil health. And for Kyle's belief that it produces better fruit, there is some science behind that. When you have healthier soils based on using compost and other things, you have less disorders like bitter pit that can happen after cold storage, and so that ends with better pack outs. So it makes business sense there too.
It sounds like there are a lot of different kinds of benefits. We're going to shift gears here just a little bit to talk about a very specific kind of waste or waste adjacent topic, and we're going to talk about packaging, which gets a little bit of a bad reputation, especially when it comes to produce, although it's hard to imagine how as an industry we could function the way that we do without the packaging options that we have available to us today. I always like to picture needing to buy a bagged salad but without the bag to hold all the pieces together. It is a key part of what we do. It's a key part of our food safety programs, and we are going to need packaging for a little while still. So Jonathan, I'm hoping that you can talk to us just a little bit about one of the upcoming requirements that we are seeing increasingly. So if anyone has heard the phrase EPR, or extended producer responsibility, let's make sure everybody in the room has a good base understanding of what that is.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, by a show of hands, how many people have heard or know what extended producer responsibility is? All right, so I got work to do. So extended producer responsibility is, at the end of the day, it is a policy lever that is being rolled out in the U.S. Currently, there's 7 states that currently have extended producer responsibility bills in place or about to be in place. And really what this does is it shifts responsibility from the local municipalities to really shifting responsibility for enabling collection of waste from, of course my phone goes off right when I'm trying to talk. Shifts responsibility from to the producers. So that is a big change, but it's all a funding mechanism to help enable collection, sortation, and reduction as well, with various targets that have been implemented. EPR legislation is something that has been enacted on a global basis, but this is the first time we're seeing it in the U.S. Canada recently, and all throughout Europe as well. But this is something that is very real, and it's a very real challenge for a lot of people as we navigate this new legislation.
It is definitely a challenge. Anytime we're shifting from sort of our status quo to a new system, that definitely presents an opportunity for additional costs and additional difficulties. What are some of the downsides of our current system, and how can a well-designed EPR situation help us to make positive change and drive value for businesses?
Yeah, I think the key here is that the current system is very fragmented. There's we can rattle off any number of issues, but the real thing here is that we have to drive out the inefficiencies, and we have to find the pathways to enabling us to have much more efficient systems that exist from the standpoint of a well-designed EPR program can create value, most notably about stabilizing benefits throughout the value chain for brands they can confidentially innovate at scale, and sustainable packaging is that pathway. I think we need reliability of recycled materials is one of the key elements that gets overlooked. And the value chain, as far as enabling recycled content incorporation, is one of the key fundamentals, but also one of the missing elements that exists with EPR legislation as it stands today is domestic sourcing requirements, and forcing domestic sourcing requirements that will enable the price compression and enable a more economic viable incorporation of recycled content.
So what we're hearing is There's a challenge, but there are some solutions, and it's
Yeah.
not going away.
Correct.
So Justin, with packaging being such a priority across the industry, how has AD USA been approaching this transition towards more sustainable materials, recognizing that we do need packaging?
No, yeah, packaging is really it's a challenging topic from the standpoint of like, plastic packaging in particular, it does serve a level of functionality. To your point, it's, when packaging is on product and even in areas like produce, right, with a lot of the different categories that are represented here in the room today, packaging can, prolong shelf life, and we're talking about food waste and kind of that correlation there. And so we've made a number of different commitments on packaging, just recognizing the importance, though, of circularity and of that packaging. So if there is plastic, how can that plastic be more recyclable, or kind of where are the opportunities to either make it more recyclable or use more recycled content, really kind of look at just reducing the overall packaging footprint. And there's a journey kind of within that and a lot of different learnings. And it's one of those things that, scalability can provide some of the cost efficiencies and things that we're talking about. But if you're piloting different initiatives and looking at kind of testing out new types of packaging and solutions, there may be an initial cost up front. And that's one of the things that we've had to, work through on the business is there's kind of a broader, longer term picture with some of these initiatives. And if you're leading on a topic, there may be some initial cost up front, but eventually there's more kind of scale of opportunities and you're kind of looking at packaging a little bit more holistically. And there's also the side of the consumer sentiment and consumer demand as well too. So the consumer also is voicing that they're looking for more sustainable options and not things that they're just gonna have to throw away when they get home. Is, they expect the retailer and the suppliers that we're partnered with and stuff to be working on solutions and things that could be recycled at home, or there's options at store drop off and different things like that. So working with groups like the US Plastics Pact and kind of working with suppliers and kind of understanding where the industry is at it's been a journey on packaging for sure, but there's been a lot of learnings. And I think for us, there's still more work to be done as we look at it, and just how can we kind of make our packaging more circular, meeting the consumer demands, but then also making sure it makes sense for the business as well.
Absolutely. Mr. Milton has made some of those changes and has invested in some of those difficult early stage testing and processes and sort of figuring out what will work best for your products. Janet, could you tell us a little bit more about what you've been able to achieve through that work?
Sure, yeah. We have a consumer pack called our Easy Band. It's a fiber-based 4-pack for apples. And we really got into that actually during COVID. There was the shift from buying, more often in bulk to wanting a packaged product and plastic bags specifically for apples. But that presented a problem for us because we have a lot of nice big apples that don't fit very well in plastic bags. So we needed a better solution. And luckily there was widespread adoption of this kind of a package already in Europe. And so we had a good proven model of that this could work. And so we trialed it kind of on a small scale with a couple different retailers, tried it out, refined it, and then we're able to scale that up. So it was really that collaboration with retailers that helped make sure that it worked well for them and worked well for their customers. We haven't quite achieved cost parity on that product yet, but we do see a path forward for that. It was the same when we started, bagging and pouch bags for apples, that was a more expensive option in terms of packaging than alternatives. But once you're able to automate and once you're able to kind of increase the volume, then the costs can come down. And there's a lot of other value for sustainable packaging that might cost more in the long term. Obviously, meeting retail requirements. We have retail customers that are really interested, and their customers are really interested, like you said, in a more sustainable option. It differentiates us in the marketplace because it shows that we're an innovator in terms of sustainable packaging. It offers better branding for that 4-pack. You used to buy just the bulk apple with the PLU sticker, and so now there's an opportunity for a little bit more branding of our product. And there's other benefits too, like shoppers online, bulk can be a little bit difficult, so having that 4-pack is nice, or even in the store, making sure a lot of our Easy Band are organic, so make sure you get that ring when you're in store, that gets rung up properly. So there's a lot of other business cases for the product besides just the sustainability piece.
Absolutely. All right, we've talked about two of the big sticky problems in sustainability. We've talked waste, we've talked packaging. Let's talk a little bit more broadly about resource efficiency. And waste in packaging are sort of questions related to that, but there are a lot of other resources that we use as businesses. Tyler, there are some objectives that you have when you go into a retail store, but there are also some additional opportunities, maybe something unexpected that retailers have gained from working with Flash Food. What are some of those benefits?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're up here, we're talking about food waste and sustainability. I often think of our platform as a marketing platform. You know, in a traditional marketing setting, whether digital or non-digital channels, you know, you're trying to promote your brand to people to drive them into your store and to interact. And I think a lot of technologies today, like an Instacart, which has been very, very beneficial to grocers, it takes people out of the in-store experience. And so many grocers put a lot of investment and effort into making their stores look beautiful and creating the repetition of visitation. And that's hard today, because you have e-commerce platforms pulling people out of the store. You have extremely cost-conscious consumers having to turn to more discount-focused grocers, purely out of necessity, because they can't afford to put food in their pantries and in their fridges because of, you know, inflation, because of jobs, all those things. And so Flash Food becomes this hook that any grocer can use to create a competitive advantage and to have a measurable impact on in-store foot traffic, on attracting people with good food that you're not marking down in the traditional sense. You're just putting through a different channel, yes, at a discount, but it's a more discreet way to mark down. I was having a conversation last night with a grocer talking about just their current markdown strategy, and they have a rack or a cart in the front of the store. You go to a lot of stores and there's like a rack, a random rack by the bathroom. It's not a very good shopper experience, but there is value to that product. And so what we do is we basically take product that is kind of shoved to the side in many cases, or is potentially compressing margin in many cases. Like if you look at a meat rack, and a lot of grocers will mark down on rack. And so, you know, you have a promotion to move a pork chops, like I saw this in the store. You have a 5-pack of pork chops for $5. And right below it, you have a 4-pack of pork chops at full price at $8. And so that grocer is basically giving up $1 per chop. And if I'm a shopper, I'm like, of course I'm gonna get the 5 for $5 versus the 4 for $8, even if you can afford the 4 for $8. And so we become this channel to say, hey, if you were to actually pull that out of the rack or reduce the instances of markdown product in the rack, you're like reducing the chance of margin compression on full price retail items. You're creating a discrete way for discount shoppers to interact. And then once they're in the store, they actually supplement their cart at a really high rate. So we see that shoppers are visiting stores an additional almost 4 times per month. So an additional visit to the store per week. About 27% of our shoppers are new or infrequent shoppers to the stores we work with. And then about 65% of the time, they're purchasing additional retail items at $28 per cart. So you're adding foot traffic, you're adding cart value, and you're adding shoppers in a competitive market. And all of that is being done without any penny of marketing spend. There is labor involved. You have to change your processes, but we aim to map to your current store labor as much as possible. But it's effectively, you're investing a bit of labor time, a bit of change in process as an alternative marketing channel that has very tangible ROI, where if you're spending money on Google search or Facebook or local news or whatever it might be, it's much harder to quantify the impact of that. You don't know specifically that you're getting 10 shoppers in store every day. So it's almost this closed loop marketing channel that you've discovered by taking a product that was more of a pain point. How am I gonna sell this through? How am I gonna throw it away? How am I gonna deal with the disposal costs? And turning that into a driver of foot traffic and reducing the amount of dumpsters that you have to pay out the back every week, every month, every year, and that adds up. And so when you put all that together, you know, we see, like, you know, depending on how much people are posting, somewhere between like 6 and 12x ROI on the cost to implement our program when you take into account waste cost reduction, retail visitation value, all of those things.
I love it. A lot of different kinds of efficiency within that, from how much money you're spending on marketing to this other waste piece again. How do we cut back on the amount of waste that goes to landfill that and product that we cannot sell? Justin, let's talk a little bit about energy management, so another kind of resource. Why is energy management a strategic focus for ADUSA, and how is it supporting your other initiatives?
Yeah, no, so as we've sort of been talking here in a couple of our different topics, we've really touched on a few of the different really key operational expenses. If we think about trash and store services like we were talking about a moment ago, or packaging and supplies, labor is another big one, depending on what programs we have in store and how we can be efficient with labor and stuff. But energy and utilities is a really large expense, and it's also really key to a lot of the work that we're doing on climate and emissions. As part of ADUSA and Ahold Delhaize, kind of the global company, we have a net zero commitment by 2040 for our own operations, and then by 2050 for our entire value chain. And so there are a lot of different components within that, and we look at kind of different categories of emissions and really how to be more efficient and how to work strategically and work throughout our business and with our suppliers to kind of make sure we're staying on track with these goals, but also just being as efficient with resources as we can. Energy in particular is really a key category kind of within all of this, and where we're at today. So one of the brands of Ahold Delhaize USA, Food Line, we're kind of right in the heart of Food Line, a lot of different stores kind of around this area. Food Line has received the Energy Star EPA award for 23 consecutive years for Energy Star Partner of the Year. So it leads the industry for that particular metric. So some of this work has been in place for a very long time, and when I'm talking about energy management, I'm talking about things like even as simple as converting the lighting to LEDs, which are more efficient and can pay themselves off in terms of an investment, or putting doors on refrigerated cases, or looking at energy management systems and how we're monitoring and managing electricity in our stores. There are a lot of different components that go within that, and again, I'm making the connection between how we're managing an overarching sustainability strategy, how we're achieving our goals, but it's directly correlated to kind of business expenses and how we can run and operate stores as efficiently as possible. And energy is definitely another one of those really key categories that touches on a lot of these components and is a key part of our work as we work towards our goals.
Yeah. So a holistic thinking question to this, and actually, Johnny, you talked a little bit about that before. Like, yes, this product might take a little bit more time. It might be a little bit more expensive at the front, but it comes back later in other kinds of benefits. Jonathan, when we talk about packaging, we are talking about a lot of different kinds of packaging, but let's talk about PCR content. Can you give everybody a summary? What is PCR? And what would you say to companies that are still wondering if that's something that they should be working into their plastic packaging?
Yeah. So when we talk about what is PCR, it's post-consumer recycled content. So it's material that has met its end of life, been collected, sorted, cleaned, and reprocessed, and turned back into pellets. As I was talking about earlier, the PCR market is one that is maturing. There's people that talk about recycling is broken or any other things, but the reality is the recycling system that was designed and implemented in the 1950s. And so there's been a lot of progress over time, but there's been also a lot of rapid progress that has taken place over the past 5 to 10 years. But I think the overall economics is very much a maturing conversation from the standpoint of people are making the decision and making the strategic decision to incorporate recycled content because consumers are paying attention, not just because it's being mandated through EPR, but also because of voluntary commitments that a lot of organizations are making to improve their overarching sustainability. But buying recycled content is not just a compliance exercise, it is that strategic decision. And because of that point, and consumers wanting to see and wanting to know that recycled content is going into their package. But it circles back to the comment I made around domestic sourcing and why that's so important. And even for me, who I know that I'm never the smartest guy in the room, but it's basic economics. And we need to drive the demand to help compress the pricing because the pricing associated with virgin material is so low. And right now, the virgin market is at near rock bottom pricing. So if you're paying attention to anything that's going on in the plastics industry, pricing for plastics is very low. And that's why we really need to eliminate sourcing post-consumer recycled content material outside the domestic market. That will really help to drive that price compression and ultimately long-term have long-lasting implications on the post-consumer recycled content market.
So there's packaging, waste, energy. We have one more resource and one more key element of sustainability that we haven't talked about, I don't think, almost at all yet. I think, Tyler, you touched on it briefly before. But that's social accountability. Because people, whether they are our staff or our customers or our employees, anywhere along the supply chain, they're a resource for us too. And I think the first question on this one goes to Jana. Stemilt has done a lot of work on different kinds of certifications and social accountability programs. What's been the benefit to putting in those resources on the front end, knowing that they take time, energy, existing staff labor, but you keep doing it? So what is the ROI on that?
Social responsibility is definitely an important thing at Stemilt. It's a value that our owners, the Mathesons, have really prioritized. And our mission is to cultivate people and delight consumers through excellence. So people are kind of half that equation really in our mission at Stemilt. And we've done it through a couple of different programs. One is the Equitable Food Initiative, EFI, and that we have found improves communication and improves safety, quality in our orchards and in our packing houses. And that can lead to fewer injuries, which saves money, of course, but it's obviously just what's right to do. Higher productivity, and in the end, really better fruit quality, which is obviously our end goal. We also partner with an H2A ethical recruiting partner called Cierto, and that helps us with reduced turnover. We have a really high return rate for our guest workers through the H2A program, and that reduces training time and cost there. So there's really clear ROI in that as well. And those type of things really strengthen our reputation and with our retail partners who also really value fair labor practices.
And Tyler, just thinking about the other end of the supply chain, your mission is to reduce waste, but there's also an opportunity to serve communities with the highest barriers to a nutritious food. How do you balance those two objectives?
I mean, they go hand in hand. Our mission is to feed families, not landfills. And so it is both sides of that. I think right now there's a major focus on health and wellness. And it is happening at the same time where costs are prohibitively expensive, whether to eat out or even to go to the store. And there's a lot of people who want to eat healthier, but they don't have the ability or the access to that food. And so I always use the line, we're a channel to diversify access to healthy food. We did an impact report from 2024 that we released this spring, and we found that 70% of users who are on the Flash Food app reported eating healthier, eating more fresh food than if they didn't have the platform. And we started how much of the impact is in the fresh category. I think it's like 40 to 50% of all the food we sell, maybe more, is fresh. So meat is our #1 seller, and it sells through at a really, really high percentage. So meat makes up, I think, over 20% and sells through at like 85, 90% of all meat that's posted is purchased. Produce is second, and we work with our grocers. Generally, they sell something called a produce box, which is a mixed bundle of loose produce. And so someone pays $5 and they get 5 or 10 pounds of produce, depending on how the grocer sets it up. And so we become this channel for people who, everyday people who just want to have more fresh food in their homes, in their fridges, for their families, and they may or may not be able to do that on their own, and we become a channel to allow them to do that. Because you have, in our society, you have the folks who can afford it on a regular basis, you have the folks who definitely can't afford it and are going to food banks on a regular basis, but there's a very substantial portion of the population that they're not going to go to food banks, or maybe they do sometimes, but not all the time. Or like maybe it's a rough week or a rough month and they can't afford to stock their kitchen every day or every week. Like that's squarely where we can sit as a channel for grocers to say, hey, we hear you, we want to help support you, give you fresh, healthy food. Here's this access point that is discreet, that is much more respectful than like digging through a cart in the front of the store or looking at the shelf in the back of the store. Not to say you can't do that or you can't mark down. You absolutely should do all channels to give access to food and sell through as much as possible. But we are this technology-driven way where people feel very comfortable and confident knowing exactly what they're going to get before they walk into the store, making that transaction with our platform so they don't have to deal with buying discounted food and your stores don't have to deal with processing discounted food. And then they can fill in the gaps with whatever they want to purchase. And so it is this diversified way to get people access where they didn't have it before. And it really does impact. We hear so many people on the consumer side, on social media, through inbound unsolicited messages. Thank you so much for your platform. It helps me. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with grocers in this way. And then we hear the same thing from grocers, from the actual operators, the people on the floor, the store managers, the HQ employees saying like, we love this program because it is a new way for us to address both this problem but also this opportunity to feed people. I feel like those solutions are kind of rare to find because it's all about margin, it's all about sell-through, it's all about the retail experience. We are this add-on that has a relatively low lift, but a really high ROI, not only from a financial perspective, but also from a social good perspective.
Beautiful. What a great place to start to wrap up some of our pre-scripted questions. And I want to take a minute to remind everyone of what Garland said at the beginning. If you have a question, we'll be doing a Q&A here in just a minute, but you'll need to submit that question through the app. And so if you don't have the app on your phone, see if maybe your neighbor has the app on their phone. Pull up today's event for this sustainability session, and you can add a question at the bottom, so you'll scroll down on your screen. But before we get to that Q&A, I've got one last question for everyone. Final thoughts. Anything that we didn't talk about today regarding sustainability that you think is really contributing to how you think of sustainability as contributing to your business case? Can we start again with John?
Sure. I would just say that I have found in my time before in nonprofit and public sector, but now true in business as well, that people come to sustainability from a lot of different motivations. It might be saving money and getting that competitive advantage. It might be more about human health or ecosystem health or reducing emissions. But it often seems to, I think the beauty in it is that the actions kind of align and we really do have very similar outcomes in the end. And so regardless of kind of where you're coming from or what the intent is, the goal is really the same, to kind of keep growing for the next generation.
Yeah, so for me, I resonate with that point around kind of sustainability can have different entry points and there's a lot of different kind of facets to it. And I mentioned that in one of my opening comments is just, sustainability can mean a lot of different things and our team focuses on many different topics. Some of them are evolving and very challenging, cover kind of different things throughout the value chain and kind of a global sourcing, global supply chain. That sustainability can touch on a lot of different things, but like one of the key things for us and I think that we do well in our organization is stay coordinated and connected internally and kind of understand what those value points are for the different teams and kind of how this shows up from everyone from the store manager at a retail location to a category manager in sourcing to the finance team and how we're going to budget for this and kind of look at these broader pictures of some of our different sustainability initiatives. So that coordination is really key. We do a lot of different reporting. There's different components of kind of the sustainability things, and I think having that visibility is really important as well too. So knowing how these initiatives are coming together and what this means for our business, what this means for our customer, what this means for our goals, and all of these different kind of components. So that's a lot of the work our team does, is kind of around that coordination and building that strategy and really integrating it within the business on how it makes sense, so we continue to do the right things for the environment, for the customers, and kind of for how we are taking care of the planet, kind of as a large grocery retailer. So, and the last piece of this too is just where there's opportunities for kind of common definitions and goals and those sort of things. That helps, because a lot of what we've talked about, or in kind of some of my talking points, are around scalability and some of those efficiencies and different things like that, where you know, if everybody's doing a different packaging initiative or kind of has different approaches for you know, whatever the topic may be, it can be hard as an industry to kind of move forward. So sessions like this are really important, and kind of working with groups like the US Plastic Pack. We're part of something called the US Food Waste Pack. These different industry groups and trade groups help us stay connected. And you know, while we can differentiate in our own way and kind of execute a strategy in our own way, some of those commonalities and where we can drive efficiencies and collaborate with the industry is just a really important piece to this.
Yeah, so I would close with this, that sustainability is no longer a side project. It can't be. I think we talked about, you mentioned transparency and clarity, and I reflect back to a story that involves my dad. When I was a little kid, my dad said, if something goes wrong, just don't lie. Tell me what's wrong, and we'll fix it and work together. And that's what has to happen when it comes to enabling sustainability today. That is why we need to come together. That's why we need to be transparent about the challenges that we're being faced in enabling sustainability for consumers. They need to understand that the work and all that's going in to enabling products to be more sustainable for them, it's hard. This is not an easy, there's no easy button on the journey to plastic circularity, or an easy button when it comes to reduction of food waste. There is no easy button, and there is no silver bullet. It's going to take a collaborative effort. It's going to take everybody uniting together to eliminate, in a lot of ways, that competitiveness, because there is in any number of areas where we can compete, but sustainability is not an area where we need to. We need to come together to tackle these challenges together to enable a better environment moving forward.
I mean, sustainability is such a huge concept. I've been in my space, like food tech and specifically waste marketplaces, for a while. And when I first started at a different company, a competitive company to what I do now, the pitch started, like when I joined that company, it was like 35% of all the food we produce goes to waste. And that was like the first slide of the pitch deck. And you'd present that, and people would kind of nod their heads and then be like, okay, like that's a bummer. But at the end of the day, like that is too big a problem for one individual grocer, one individual decision maker to solve. And so what I've realized over the past 5 or so years is you can't, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's like you need to focus on what are my actual business problems. I need more foot traffic. I need to get more margin back into my bottom line. I need more engagement tactics for my in-store staff, whatever it might be. And say, how can I do that with not only a positive business impact, but a positive sustainability impact? And I really view sustainability, when narrowed into specific channels, food waste or packaging or whatever it might be, as more of a measure than an action, right? Like your business is profitable or not profitable. Your business is sustainable or not sustainable, depending on the metrics you're looking at. And so it's more about what are the actions, what are the programs that you are implementing to get you into the black and out of the red. And so when I talk to grocers, it's much more about like, hey, like how are you recouping revenue into your shrink line to reduce that overall cost and improve your margins? How are you drawing consumers into your stores on a consistent basis? And, is spending time and money on Google search a net positive for the environment? Like, no, it just drives foot traffic and spends money. And it's not that that's a bad channel, but are there other means that you can implement and other platforms you can implement, whether it is a flash food or an upshop or an off-fresh or whoever it might be, to improve your ordering, to improve your shrink reduction, like all these things that have a net positive outcome on both your business and the planet. And so it's effectively selecting, like, yes, this maybe isn't the path that we've taken for the past 5, 10, 50 years, but it's something different that will have a net positive outcome for my business, for the planet, and like that needs to be the thought process, and there needs to be an openness to change things up, to drive a net benefit, and look at both sides of, is this business positive and is this planet positive? And I think that type of thinking hopefully will just get more engagement, more conversation, and more opportunity for grocers to test things out and have an openness to what impact am I making?
So we've got honesty, teamwork, vision, and action. 4 easy steps for this early 8 a.m. session. Panelists, thank you all so much for answering my questions. I think we're gonna pass it off to the audience, and I'm gonna pull out my handy dandy SEPC app and see what kinds of questions the audience has for all of you. All right, first question is for Jonathan. Would you talk a little bit about the US infrastructure for recycling clamshells, since that is one of the single-use plastics in produce?
Yeah. So that is one of the overarching challenges, is the lack of consistency that exists from municipality to municipality. And enabling clamshells and PET thermoforms, that's one of the key areas of focus for the US Pact to enable collection and sortation. And through our work with the Association of Plastic Recyclers, through our work with the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, but ultimately these funding mechanisms that we talk about through EPR is that pathway to make sure that everything is being collected and enabling the sortation and the funding of the recyclers to be able to collect those thermoform clamshells. So it is a key and fundamental element that we need to see improvement and the infrastructure to support it. But also we need it from a standpoint of enabling and demystifying the consumer element. That's one of the parts that oftentimes in sustainability gets missed. We have to enable ease and convenience for consumers to not question, is this recyclable, is this not recyclable, and that the clamshell conversation is a very real one, but through better labeling systems and through supporting and financially supporting the collection and sortation, it will enable that to become better. So that's a perfect example of why EPR is so important.
Beautiful. And we have an EPR follow-up question. We actually have several EPR follow-up questions. Well, let's try to put them all into one. There are a lot of new regulations coming out. You mentioned 7 states have upcoming, either current or upcoming requirements. It's a lot to keep track of. There will probably be new states too in the near term. Where can or what can growers and packers and shippers do to keep track of some of these requirements? Who can help them find what they need? Where would you send them?
I would say come be a part of the US Plastic Pact. That was an easy part of that question. But the reality is that there's a lot that's happening, and even in states where EPR is being implemented, there is changing laws. So if you sell into one of those 7 states, you're going to be, and if you are not already, you are required to report on a number of metrics, and then you will get a tax bill, basically, that you will be paying. This is being managed by what is known as the Circular Action Alliance, which represents or is the Producer Responsibility Office. So if you have not yet, and you sell into one of the, whether it's Oregon, Washington, Colorado, California, Minnesota, Maryland, which one am I forgetting? Maine. I said Washington. So anyway, if you're selling into any of those states, you should be registered with the Circular Action Alliance, and they will work through the entire process of what you can expect and help you get to the point where you can accurately report. But those states are only serve as the beginning. I would say that the Northeast corridor is expected to be pretty busy this fall during the legislative season as New Jersey and New York continue to look at EPR. There is also some other states that is not on a lot of people's radar that are looking at how we'll just say some political exercises can be pathways to the White House, as Gavin Newsom has used and is part of the EPR legislation there. So there is, this landscape is very much a changing dynamic, and that's why it's so important to be a part of organizations that have representation from all to stay in line and stay in tune with it.
Yeah, this is a very dynamic space, something to very much keep an eye on, especially as we move into some of those new legislative sessions. This is one of the big things that has changed in sustainability over the last few decades. But we have sort of an open question. What else do we think, if we sort of took out our crystal ball, what do we see in the next 10 years? What is the focus? What are the things that you're thinking about, panelists, as we move into the sort of 2025 to 2035 range? We all had our 2025 goals.
Yeah, I can start just because I sort of said some of this in my closing thoughts a little bit. It was like, there's a lot of different components of sustainability, and I think it can mean different things for different people, and depending on kind of where you're at kind of in the process. We, as an organization, we do have a number of goals and commitments that stretch out through 2030, 2035, 2040, and even 2050. And some of those overarching topics touch on a lot of what we're talking about today around just how we manage climate impact and kind of what that means for us and kind of our overall value chain and how we're looking at waste. These are really things that we plan to continue to be focused on and continue to kind of look at over the next decade or so with this work. But outside of regulation, which is a very kind of complex area too, like just being a retailer that operates in many states and counties and cities and stuff, what we are either required to do by law might vary by county and kind of what packaging things are kind of allowed there. So I think one of the things that would be helpful in the future is where there's kind of more consistent things, whether it's done at the federal level or just, kind of regional level or whatever, because otherwise, your business, as a grower, as a retailer, kind of however you're functioning, if you operate in multiple localities, you could be having to comply with different things. And so consistency over the long term is something that I think it would be helpful. But generally from like a goal standpoint, we do have some overarching goals and things, and there's also evolving topics as well too, whether it's kind of nature and how we're sourcing our products and just making sure we're providing things in the right way, and then at the same time continuing to check in with the customer and check in on our environmental impact and kind of do different assessments and different things to make sure we're staying on track with what we're supposed to over the next decade.
The utilization of technology and AI to help with all these processes. Because I think it is overwhelming to think, how are we going to do this? But there's better ordering systems, there's better inventory management systems, there's better waste reduction systems. Like there's all these things. We're, for instance, developing something that I'm seeing a lot of platforms develop, whether it be on-shelf tags or ordering systems or whatever, is dynamic pricing. And having a price that moves based on the available inventory, the demand for that inventory, and not as a method to gouge customers, but more as a method to ensure full sell-through because the product that has 7 days of shelf life left is one price. At 5, it's a lower price. At 3, it's a lower price. At 1, it's a lower price. And so it's not just like yellow sticker at 2 days and call it a day. It's like have a dynamic experience where someone who is able to use stuff day of is able to get a better deal than someone who wants to stock up for the week. And using those types of tools and those types of technologies, they're going to become more prolific and they're going to become more advanced, and I think the usage and willingness to implement advanced technologies in the operations of the day-to-day grocer and manufacturer is going to be essential to just making these operations much, much more efficient and less waste heavy.
So I would say when we talk about targets and goals and we talk about, there's a lot of people that had drawn a line in the sand when it came to 2025. There's a lot of people that made commitments in enabling sustainability. But if we roll back the tape and we look to where we were 5 years ago, there's been a tremendous amount of improvement. There's been a tremendous amount of innovation. There's legislative impacts. But the innovation and the true galvanization that has happened across, whether it's food packaging or whether it's medical packaging or whether it's industrial packaging, it's all been, progress has been made, but I would tell you that I expect to see the progress that is seen over the course of the next 5 years to be significantly greater because the foundation has been laid in this initial 5-year chunk. And the mobilization that has happened across the plastic and flexible plastic and rigid plastic value chain has been tremendous. And so while I can sit here and say that, by no means will I sit here and say that this is our spike the football moment. We've still got promises to keep. We've still got a pathway forward. But what I would promise is that the next 5 years will be far more impactful than the last 5 years.
Well, I hope.
I was just going to share a few things from that grower, packer, shipper perspective quickly. 3 things that come to mind in terms of kind of the future. Biodiversity, I think, is going to be a really big topic, looking at how agriculture kind of interacts with nature. I'm hearing more and more about that. Carbon credits, so how we might actually create a new revenue stream in sustainability and looking at regenerative agriculture, and if we can improve our soil health, can we kind of capitalize on that by sequestering carbon is something that we're pretty interested in. And then the next kind of eco-label or certification, like what's going to resonate with the consumer in terms of, organic as a standard, but what might be next for sustainability.
Wonderful. Very optimistic. I hope to join all of you back here in 5 years so that we can hear all about the progress that you've made. And thank you all again so much for joining us. That is the time that we have. Please come and ask more questions of our panelists one-on-one. But thanks everybody for coming, and I think Garland's gonna see us off.
Oz for our panelists, thank you, and our great moderator. So we did not get to everybody's Q&A, but thank you. We had a lot of great questions, and like I said, we will follow up with you all on your questions after the session. Please also utilize the survey. If you look in your app underneath this session, you can take a survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, this is a part of SEPC's new sustainability education series. Help us understand what you liked, what you didn't, and what we can do going forward. We would really appreciate that feedback. And then now, if you will, go enjoy some refreshments and head out there so we can clean the room for our next education session. What's new at 9:30. Thank you.